Right, so machine learning is massive growth area. Power BI, another massive growth area. Most people don't kind of realize that there's actually a reasonable overlap between the two. You don't have to have a PhD in data science to actually get started with doing some machine learning stuff. If you have Power BI, especially if you have Power BI Premium, there are ways that you can make use of stuff. So I've got just a few demos to go through that to show you what that can look like. Let me get my screen shared. Hopefully you can all see Power BI Desktop.
Yes, we can.
Right, what time is it? Okay, so I've got two data sets here that we'll be playing with. One of them is just a list of vehicles, and we've got the vehicle name, we've got the miles per gallon. So this is the field that we're going to be using to try and look at and predict or understand. We'll use the various other bits of information, such as the number of cylinders, the size of the engine, horsepower, weight, acceleration, year, etc. I also have a Boolean classifier here, which is just a straight function of the MPG, but ignore that for this. The other data set we have is a list of tweets, or a list of fake tweets. And we'll use this to have a play with some semantic analysis of text. So what can we do with this? Well, we've got, you can do your basic analysis by putting MPG versus horsepower, and we can clearly see there's a correlation here. We can plot it against year, and we can see another correlation there. So we can manually do this and grab different features and put it on visuals to try and see what has a relationship and what doesn't. But there are ways we can automate it by using some of the funky new visuals in Power BI. One of which is the key influencers visual. So we can drag that on. This was in preview. I believe it's now in publicly available now. Let's just have a quick check. Options, preview features. Where's that gone? Yeah, looks like it's fully active now. So we can go into our miles per gallon. And we can say, right, I want to predict or analyze my MPG. What do we want to analyze that by? Well, let's go acceleration, country code, cylinders, displacement, horsepower, weight, and year. Now, I've not selected the model because that's text. We're not getting into text analysis yet. And I'm not including high MPG because that is just a function of MPG. If it's less than this value, it's one thing. If it's greater than the other. So for the purposes of this, we can ignore that. And this gives us a visual that shows us the relative influence of each of the source features in whether they actually influence our MPG. Now, a user using this has no real knowledge that this is even doing any kind of machine learning or stats analysis behind the scenes. To them, it's just a visual. And that shows where machine learning is going these days. It's moving to a more democratized, off-the-shelf, drag-and-drop model. So we can see here that the biggest influencer is, actually, let's change this to what influences MPG to decrease. What makes a vehicle bad? Well, the biggest one is acceleration. If it's 9.48 seconds or less, sorry, if it's 11.2 seconds, I'm not sure what that means, 11.2 seconds 0 to 60, I presume, then it has a big impact. It tends to reduce the MPG by 9.48. Country code 1, well, that's America. That stands to reason because they like their big muscle cars. The next feature is weight, then year, horsepower, etc. Cylinders doesn't actually make that much difference. So if we're trying to understand how to change our next engine or what car we want to buy, even without knowing the MPG of a vehicle, we can look at this to look at other factors about the engine and get a feeling for how good or bad it's likely to be. Now, this isn't a prediction model. This is just telling us which features may make a good predictor. And we can click on each of these and see some information. So there we go. So weight, we can see there it's built this correlation, year, etc. So it's a way of doing some much more deep analysis without having to understand the data. It also clusters our data. So what makes MPG more likely to be low? Well, we've got 4 different clusters, and each of them exhibits very similar characteristics. So let's look at cluster segment 1. Well, this includes vehicles where with more than 5 cylinders, horsepower 139 or more, and less than 74. Any vehicle that exhibits those parameters is likely to have a very similar performance characteristics. So you can use it to try and cluster customer behavior, vehicle performance, etc., anything you want. We can get rid of that, and we can bring on another visual called the decomposition tree. And it does a very similar thing. We want to analyze MPG, and we want to explain it by all the same fields we chose before. And this will then show us the MPG, but we can then drill down into this and split it by either a particular field that we want to look at it by, let's say cylinders, and see how that reacts, or we can ask it to give us what influences a low MPG value, and it will find the most important factor that influences it and drill it down by that. And then we can keep on going through this. So this does a very similar thing to the key influences, but allows a more interactive approach to be able to find the high and low parts of our data. We also have the Q&A panel. So with this, we can start asking a question. What is the best car? Now, we know, in this case, it knows that it's actually related car here. It thinks is model. Actually, it has got a red line. So it's got a confusion between these two words. What does that mean? So let's define car. And we can say a car is a model. Now, obviously, our column here is called model, so this just relates those two together. The best MPG that have, well, that doesn't make sense. Let's go low MP, sorry, best is high MPG, isn't it? So let's choose high MPG. So now we've defined these two characteristics, it should be able to work out what our best car is. Now that sounds great until you realise there are still a few issues with this. I've asked for cars that have high MPG. It's got a red box around it, it doesn't understand. For some reason it has an issue with high, but if we ask for a low MPG, that works. And it's now found the lowest MPG. So there's still a few issues with this, so I certainly wouldn't use it in production, but that does give us an ability to define these terms and these synonyms to be able to ask free text questions. So if I then close that down, we can now ask it what is the best car, and it gives us, well, it gives us the worst car, but you get the point. And once we've got that, we can then turn it into a standard visual, and this just becomes a fixed visual. But as the data changes, that will update as well. So this kind of moving more towards a free text asking questions is an ever evolving process in this. There's also, there's a few more of these. There's a smart narrative visual, which looks at the data. Now we haven't put any other visuals on this page at the moment, so we can't do much with that at the moment. But if we go back to this other page, which has some visuals, and put on the smart narrative, it's going to look at our data and create some useful information or interpretation of that data. And anywhere you see an underline is an automated expression that's going and grabbing data from a visual. And you can define your own as well and add more text into this. And we can add something here, add a value of what is the best car. And is that going to work? No, it's not going to be that nice to us. But you can create your own measures and place them in here. And then as you interact, that smart narrative also updates to reflect whatever you've selected. So quite a nice way of enriching that. Now, one last very quick demo I'm going to do is with our tweet data set. We've got our data set of tweets, and I'm going to, we want to understand which is our best and worst tweet. So I'm going to transform data. I'm going to go into Power Query. And if you've got Power BI Premium, you get these new AI insights. So I'm going to do some text analysis over this data set. This is now going to use the account that I'm logged in with on powerbi.com. It's going to find which AI algorithms are available in my Power BI service, and I'm going to do a score sentiment. I'm going to pass in a column of a tweet text. I can give it a language, but it'll default to that. Okay, that's fine. That's now going to add an extra step to my Power Query and send this tweet up to powerbi.com. It's going to do some semantic analysis of that text and then rank it on a scale of 0 to 1, bad to good. And if we give that another couple of seconds, it should come back with some results. Come on, pedal faster. There we go. So we've now got a sentiment of that's a really positive tweet, 0.5's on the fence, that one's quite negative. So you can use this in your Power BI reports to sort it by tweets. Let's look at the worst tweets. That's the one we need to reply to first. We use this for SQL Bits conference feedback for extracting the information from the textual feedback you provide. And then we still look at everything, but it allows us to prioritize to either the most important or the best or the worst, to really focus on that information first, to make sure that we deal with any issues as we go. So that's an AI function, a cognitive service up in Azure, but now it's got full integration with Power BI Desktop. So hopefully you can see how easy it is to consume this these days. And that in 10 minutes is a brief intro to machine learning in Power BI. Thank you.